And Donald Tusk has called an emergency EU summit on April 10th in light of this Brexit vote. The EU Commission says it regrets the result, as it means that Brexit is now set to happen on April 12th. The EU's chief negotiator, Michel Barnier, says they're ready for a no-deal scenario.
Let me be frank, ladies and gentlemen. Without a positive choice, the default option will be a no deal, which has become more likely. It was never our scenario, but the EU27 is now prepared.
Supporters say that the only way forward for the UK is a no-deal Brexit that respects the will of the British people. Joining me from Washington is Nile Gardiner, director of the Heritage Foundation's Margaret Thatcher Center for Freedom and a former advisor to the late Prime Minister. Sir, the European Union is saying that a no-deal Brexit has now become likely. Not just likelier, but likely. That's the position of the EU Commission. Do you agree with that?
Well, I think that's absolutely right, actually, and I have to say that on this particular occasion, the European Commission is actually talking sense and is making very clear that the prospect of a no-deal Brexit is a very, very realistic one. And I think that's absolutely the case, that the best way now to move forward for Great Britain and also for Europe as well, and I'd add for the United States also, is for a no-deal Brexit to take place. Because if Theresa May does request a long-term extension, I think the whole Brexit process will drag on for months, even years potentially. Brexit could be derailed altogether. And I think it's simply preposterous, the idea that you'll have British candidates standing in the European parliamentary elections after 17.4 million Britons voted to leave the EU back in 2016. Theresa May needs to respect the will of the British people. I think her leadership so far has been extremely poor and weak. It's also time, I think, for her to step down and make way for a new Brexiteer Prime Minister. But certainly a no deal is the best way forward, I think.
Doesn't Theresa May also need to respect the will of Parliament? And while Parliament admittedly has been confused and confusing, the one thing that there is a clear majority against is a no-deal Brexit. So Theresa May should avoid a no-deal Brexit if she wants to respect the will of Parliament.
Well, there's no majority view in Parliament for any one particular position here.
They have voted clearly against leaving the European Union without a deal. They've made
it's not surprising that Parliament takes that position, because after all, about 75 to 80% of MPs actually voted against Brexit in the 2016 referendum. They do not reflect actually the view of the British public. And if you look at opinion polls in the UK right now, they're shifting heavily towards a no-deal Brexit as the best outcome. I would say that Parliament needs to respect the will of the British people to get out of the EU, to become a truly sovereign, free country again. And it has to be said that a great deal of MPs do not respect the democratic will of the British people. And, you know, they've been part of the problem here and part of the tremendous gridlock that is in place. And the reality is that Britain has to move forward by law on April the 12th to leave the European Union unless the Prime Minister's Brexit deal, EU withdrawal agreement, goes through Parliament, which it's not going to. It's been defeated 3 times. There's no prospect, I think, that it will get through on the fourth time. I think there's a real disconnect, actually, between the ruling political elites in Britain and the British people, who emphatically declared their intention to leave the European Union. And I think the will of the British people must be fully respected here.
Yeah, and that disconnect is certainly something that our CNN reporting teams on the ground have witnessed. This is what Britons that we interviewed have been telling us as well. Nile Gardiner, thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you very much.